What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of The Legacy Den. This is Rob. It's been a while since I've done a video. I've been busy, but now we're back in business. So, today's topic is going to be the reserve list. As many of you know, the reserve list is causing some crazy market prices right now for a lot of the cards. So, let's go over it. So first, what is the reserve list? So I'll do a little bit of a history, get everything straight. So Wizards created Magic, and then they created some sets, Arabian Nights, Antiquities, and Legends. These are kind of the supplemental sets. After that, people started collecting these cards, and of course, because people wanted them, the cards had value. Maybe the Elder Dragon Legends, the Legends were like $40 each or something, because they were big, gigantic, 7/7 flyers or whatever. So what they did was Wizards thought, hey, more people want these cards, so what we should do is we should just make a set that's white bordered, but kind of has a bunch of cards from there, and let's just print a ton of it. And that way everybody can get the cards and everybody will be happy, right? So they did that, and that was called Chronicles. So Chronicles was reprints from Legends, Antiquities, Arabian Nights, and the Dark in white border form only. So then what they did was they sent a ton of that, and there's a million boxes of Chronicles, and they didn't say they were going to do this. Suddenly, because back in those days there wasn't internet, so suddenly these stores, they just had boxes and boxes and boxes of Chronicles, and they would always say they wanted more boxes than what they would actually get. Because when they said, oh, I want 30 boxes of Legends, Wizards only sends them 10. They're like, sorry, we only have 10. So what they did was Chronicles got released, and they said, oh, I want 100 boxes. Maybe I'll get 30. And Wizards said, okay, here's 100 boxes. So now Chronicles is everywhere. And the players who were collecting all of these Elder Legend Dragon cards, all of these other expensive cards, suddenly they're worth nothing. They're practically have no value because they were just reprinted. So these players thought, whoa, if Wizards is just going to, out of nowhere, just take every valuable card I own and just reprint it, making it worth nothing, I'm out. I don't want a part of this. So Wizards said, whoa, please. And this wasn't just one or two guys. This was a ton of people who were collecting all these cards, and then suddenly a lot of the cards that they had were just worth nothing. So how would you feel if suddenly, out of nowhere, these expensive cards you bought were worth nothing? Of course, nowadays it's different. A lot of people would be like, well, if Dual Lands were reprinted, the ones I bought were expensive, but more people would be able to use them, so it's not a bad thing. However, in those days, it was different because it wasn't about that. These were collectors too, and the collectors thought, if my collection is just going to drop in value, I don't want to play Magic anymore. Hey guys, like if they're going to do this, we should just quit. They would tell their friends, and there was just a huge drop in the amount of players who wanted to continue Magic. This almost killed the game. And so what Wizards did was they said, okay, we're going to have a list of cards that we will not reprint. We're not going to reprint them, so if you keep them, if you buy them, your collection will not be affected no matter what. So they're like, well, let's just take these rare cards from Alpha, Beta, Legends, whatever. And they took all of them, they made this list. So none of those cards can be reprinted. So essentially, what it means is those cards will not drop in value, because there's only a limited amount on the market. As each copy gets bought up, that's one less copy floating around in the market. Of course, there are a bunch of cards on the reserve list that are worth pennies just because they're not very good. But even if they're not very good, they will not be reprinted again. If you want a copy of it, you have to buy an existing one already. So, what does that mean? It means if you want to buy a bunch of cards and make some money, or if you want to buy some investments to hold onto in Magic, you should buy reserve list cards. So why is this happening recently? So recently it's happening because all of these people who got into Bitcoin are selling out. They said, oh, I made $1 million on Bitcoin. I'm a gamer. I like Magic. I played when I was in, elementary school, junior high school, whatever. And now I'm about 30 something. I have a lot of money. I'm going to get back into Magic and I'm going to buy these expensive cards. So there's the normal players and then there's the Bitcoin people. And the Bitcoin people, the cryptocurrency people, just have a lot of money so they can just spend all this money. What's wrong with that, right? And they have the power, which a lot of normal people with normal incomes don't have, to buy out large amounts of expensive cards. If a card is $300 and they're like, I'm going to buy the last 15 copies that exist on TCG Player, then it's all gone. And they're not really worried about it because to them, they can afford that. But if I, normal job, no cryptocurrency, was to attempt to buy 15 copies of a $300 card, my bank account would be drained. And it's too risky for most people to be able to do. And that just causes the prices to increase like mad. So what people are trying to do now is, on the reserve list, they're trying to buy into all of these really, really cheap cards that aren't so good. It's on the reserve list. It maybe is used a little in EDH, so people are trying to pick up as many copies of those as they can and manipulate the market. But as we've seen, it's not necessarily a false manipulation. Before, when someone would buy a card and it would say, oh, this card is now worth, $600, when yesterday it was worth, $5. I don't usually believe that. But when that does happen, that card will no longer be $5. So it really depends, because nowadays everyone's trying to be a financer. So everyone is trying to spec, and everyone will actually start buying those copies that are, that $5 card that just is going up in price. I'll pay $10 for it because maybe it'll be $20 later, and maybe I'll need a copy of it. They're trying to get in so that way they don't lose out later. And this is causing a lot of panic because the next reserve list card you see, you're like, oh man, I might need a copy of this. I might need 2 copies of this eventually. So I have to buy them now. Oh, that card is going up. It's $20. It's soon going to be $50, $60, whatever. I'll buy it at $40. And suddenly people are paying $40 for a card that was $20 the day before. So this is just causing all sorts of panic among the community. And as the cheap cards that aren't worth so much are going up in price, the really, really good playable reserve list cards are going up in price too. Like the Dual Lands or the Power 9 or stuff from Legends that's actually used in decks. So what are some solutions for this? I don't really think there are any solutions, because if there's no reserve list, the market just crashes. All the store owners who spent all this money to buy these cards, they're gonna just... The Wizards does not want to anger these people, because without all of these stores that are selling their product, Wizards doesn't have a market. And they don't want to make the store owners mad, because the store owners are the ones who give them money for the boxes. Without the stores, there's no events. So they don't want to make the stores mad. And if you abolish the reserve list, the prices will tank on so many things, and all of the stock that a lot of these stores have will immediately drop. And I don't think Wizards wants to touch that, plus the lawsuits that could potentially go with it. Even if none of them will win, there's still costs involved. And people are saying, well, why don't you just reprint Dual Lands, but just make them, a little bit different? The problem is, Wizards got around this by saying the spirit of the reserve list can't be broken either. So yes, you cannot have an exact reprint, but you also can't have something that's essentially the same. So you guys know Underground Sea, right? It's a island, swamp, comes into play untapped, tapped for either, non-basic. So what if they reprint Underground Beach, which is an island swamp, taps for black or blue, but when it comes into play, you have to sacrifice a creature, or it comes into play tapped and you lose 5 life. Something like that. Like, that detriment is too bad to the point where it's not just a single replacement. So that could be printed, because that's not breaking the spirit. However, if you had a card like Underground Bay, it's an island swamp. When it comes into play, if you have 200 or less cards in your library, it comes into play untapped. Now, in most decks, in almost every single situation, that is essentially the same as an Underground Sea. So that breaks the spirit of the reserve list. They can't reprint things like that. So there's no real way to get around it either. Everyone who's saying, oh, just abolish the reserve list, it's not going to happen. I don't think Wizards wants to take that chance. The people in charge now, they wish that they never did the reserve list, but they can't even talk about the secondary market. So they can't say, well, everything is crazy high in value, so we have to abolish the reserve list, because they can't even say a single word that these cards have actual monetary value, aside from just one rare, one uncommon, commons. They can't say that, because then it gets into some weird legal thing where they're printing kind of like money, and it gets into gambling and whatever. So people who are saying, just this bubble is going to blow up, and then suddenly nobody's going to play Magic anymore, that's not going to happen. Because what happens is, if everyone says, oh, there's no legacy players, nobody's going to buy these dual lands when there's no legacy players, you know what happens? The dual lands will drop in price, maybe, right? Okay, so Underground Sea goes back down to $200. Then what happens? People who say, well, I couldn't afford an Underground Sea before, but now I can, are going to buy it up. And then we get back to the same issue. So it's just not going to happen. Once a legacy becomes cheaper, if less people are playing it, then guess what? People are going to start playing it because it's more affordable. And people who think, well, the prices are going to drop once legacy players are finished, it's not really true, because look at Vintage. The Power 9 is crazy expensive, and it's not going down in price, despite the fact that there's very few people who even play paper Vintage. And Legacy players tend to say Legacy is the best format. They agree it's the most balanced format, it's the most fun format, it's the most strategic format. Most Legacy players will say this. Whether it's true or not, or whether you agree or not, isn't the point. But they like Legacy, so they're not going to just get rid of their favorite format because some of the cards are a little expensive. Most of them will even try to find a way to just get what they need, or just shell out the cash for the price now. So people who think I should sell out now, it's definitely going to go down in price. That's not necessarily true. There's no way of telling how high things like dual lands are going to get. There's no way of knowing whether things are actually going to, settle down or not. But I wouldn't count on it. That's my advice. So this is the reserve list talk. So one more thing is, how does this affect Japan? Well, one thing is, sites like MTG Stocks or MTG Goldfish or whatever talks about the price, that tends to happen before stores in Japan update their prices. Unlike in America, most stores in Japan don't have a computer system where prices automatically update. Most stores don't go, oh, you want to buy this card? Let me check the price. Oh, okay, it went up $50 yesterday, so it's $50 more expensive. No, most of them, they have a sticker price on the card, and they sell it for that price. Some stores will try to update really, really quickly. Other stores, they don't update as quickly. If something spikes, you might be able to go that day to a store in Japan and still find it for the pre-spike price, because they don't use digital things to price their cards. Sure, they'll research the price, but they don't change it on the fly like that. They might check it every day or every morning or every few days, but it's not the same. So that's why, say for example, Frenetic Ifrit, when that card spiked in price, I was able to go to one store, buy 4 copies for $1 each, and then go to a different store and buy 4 more copies for $1.50 each. And so even though these cards were already worth, $10, $12, $15, I was actually still able to go to the store and buy them for the pre-spike price. So if you're a financer in Japan and you have money and time to go to the stores every day, you can probably make money just by looking at the stock sites, looking at the price spikes, and just buying those cards for the pre-spike prices. One thing though is Japanese stores tend to not have a lot of really old cards, especially the obscure ones. They might have dual lands. Some stores tend to have power. Some stores might have old Legends cards that people actually play, like Chains of Mephistopheles or Nethervoid or Moat. They might have copies of that because people actually want those. But if you're looking for, a random Legends cards that's spiking, not a lot of stores carry those. So you're not going to be able to get those old Legends, old Antiquities pre-spike price cards because those just probably don't exist. They've probably already been bought out, and there's such a low supply, especially in Japan, that you're not going to get those. But stuff like Weatherlight, Tempest, or the Saga cards that are slowly creeping up in price or just spiking, those are the ones that you can easily get in Japan. And I don't recommend Japanese copies because people don't like foreign copies of cards. If you're going to sell them and you want to sell them in the States because of EDH demand, you need an English card. Especially an EDH card, people don't like Japanese cards. I've had videos of this before. So that's all for this video. I hope that you guys learned something from it, or maybe it'll change your opinion about something. But the advice that MTG Finance always gives is, if you need a card, buy it. So try not to wait. I know it's like I don't always have the money for it, but sometimes just waiting a week or two could lose you out on money if we're going to buy the card anyways. If you think, oh man, I really need a Tropical Island now, you know what, I'll wait 2 weeks. Tropical Island might go up $200 in 2 weeks. You never know. So if you're thinking, oh, this reserve list card, I don't know if I should buy it, my advice is get it if you need it. Okay, this is Rob at the Legacy Den. Thanks guys for watching. Take care.